What's your best? Fire me, I freaking dare you! Moment from work? I was elbows deep in an AT&T Unix machine that should have been replaced a decade before, parts strewn all over a desk, when the client came in to see what was taking me so long. You've got 3 dead fans, one of the power supplies has failed, there's a bad CMOS battery and the video card is glitchy and refusing to allow the machine to post sometimes. Client: so how long is that going to take? 15 minutes? Me, laughing: I can patch things up in a couple hours, but I'm going to have to come back in a few days with new parts. Client: if you can't fix it in the next half hour, you're fired. I'll find someone that knows what they're doing. I stood up, grabbed my tools, and started walking. Client: where are you going? Me: I told you how long it would take, and that's longer than a half hour, so I guess I'm fired. My firing lasted about 3 more steps towards the door. You are a strong human being in my eyes. Nah. I knew he would eventually call me back in, even if it wasn't that day. He wasn't an a-hole, just seriously stressing about his accounting software being dead. Not me, but my dad. So he was delivering catering to an office one day and the receptionist obviously fucked up. She was yelling at him in front of her bosses saying that he was too late, on time with proof, and that the order was wrong when it wasn't. She was making such a big issue of it, and then said she was going to report him to his manager and get him fired. So my dad said see if he care and gave her the number. She called and my dad picked up because he is not the manager but the owner. Everyone in that room was laughing at her. Over the first year I worked there, I essentially took over most of the tasks in my department which were previously held by other departments, and was done badly because of it. This led to a massive increase in productivity. I then found out I was paid significantly less than what others were making and others in my position across the industry were making. So I go to my boss and tell them I had done all this work increasing productivity, and I would like to discuss a raise. They said no. So I worked there for another year, asking for a raise every now and again until I was offered a job that paid double. It didn't start for a couple months, so I held on to that job until I was set to submit my 2 weeks. I asked for a raise again, thinking, what the hell, why not? My boss goes off, tells me I won't get a raise and says some very colorful things about it. It culminated with her telling me, if you don't like your pay, maybe we should evaluate your future at this company. To which I replied, already have, I took another job and this was your last chance to offer me what I deserve. I quit and walked out of that office. Friends told me that my sudden departure caused a massive backup of work that ended with my manager being fired for it. God, I can only imagine how awesome it must feel for your boss to say, maybe you should evaluate your future here, and to be able to say to their face, already have, bye. Told my boss 2 weeks in advance that I was taking paid vacation on Monday and Tuesday. She approved it, no problem. I take the days off and went out of town for a school thing. I come back into the office on Wednesday and I'm locked out of my account. I talked to the operations manager, my boss's boss, who was the person who interviewed and hired me, to see what's going on. He told me that my boss said I disappeared and didn't contact anybody for 2 days. I explained it to him, and he said no problem. I talked to my boss later in the afternoon, and she is furious. Starts saying how I didn't tell anybody that I was taking paid vacation and thought I just suddenly quit. I don't know what the fuck this bitch was talking about because I told her 2 weeks ago that I was going to be out those 2 days and I have the emails to prove it. At this point I was the only person left on my team of 4 people who were there when I was hired. I was already planning on quitting in next month as I had to move for school. This bitch had the audacity to threaten to fire me. I said, if you feel like you need to let me go for your mistake, go ahead. Ended up working there for another 7 weeks before leaving on my terms. Even got to use the operations manager as a reference for another job. The best is when there are written emails proving you are right and they still argue. I was in the military and was trying to take my vacation time before I lost the days. They denied my requests 4 different times and I hadn't had a day off in 3 months and I was working 12 to 16 hours shifts most days. I was beyond done. I was teaching some new guys part of the tasks for one job. Everything was fine. I went somewhere else in the hangar to do something else on the plane. This quality assurance guy that everyone knew was a pain came in. I did my stuff good and he never bothered me, so I didn't pay him any attention. He started talking to one of the new dudes. He then asked to talk to me and pulled me aside. He then asked me I hadn't told the new guy about some super obscure caution about water under a grate in the hangar floor. Something that had nothing to do with our job, so it didn't matter. He was just being a pain. I was over the job and him, so I told him, "Listen, Sergeant QA, I've been denied my leave 4 separate times and Eve been working for 3 months straight, so if you have a problem with the way I taught them, write me up. I don't give a fuck, and you can stuff it up your ass too. Tell my boss I said that." It was a little extreme, but I was pushed to the point. When I went back, and I knew I was in deep because the guy walked out of my shop head's office and I got called right in. When I went in there, the shop head said, "I heard what happened out there. Submit the days you want to take leave right now and it'll approve it for you." Then told me I could leave. That's all I heard about it. I was shocked. Husband was having his gallbladder taken out and was having complications before surgery. I needed to leave early from work for about 2 hours and my boss threw a fit stating I couldn't leave. I told her I had 300 hours of sick time I can use for myself and my husband, and if she wanted to push I'd take all of it at once, leaving no one but her to do my job. She said she'd fire me if I tried. I just looked at her and said, "I have to go, I'll send you my DR's note." I wasn't fired. I was actually awarded that year for job performance. I didn't take all 300 hours. I just threatened to, since I only took the day off. Was working in a restaurant. Already knew I was sick, but our managers were a-holes and I knew if I called and they'd be extremely pissy. Showed up to work around 8 a.m. By 9 a.m. I knew I wasn't gonna last the rest of the day. Managers still made me stay. Around 9:30 I was pre-bussing my tables and just the sight of half-eaten food pushed me over the edge. Managed to hold my vomit until I got to the dishwashing area, but puked in a trash can immediately after putting my plates down. A coworker saw me and vouched for me when I went to tell my manager I was leaving for the doctor. He said, "Even with a doctor's note, if you leave work today you'll be fired." I said, "You have human waste in a kitchen trash can and haven't even done anything about it. It's on camera. I'm leaving." Showed up for work a few days later and didn't hear anything about it. Ended up quitting a few weeks later for a job at a couple considerably higher scale restaurant. I worked at Burger King as a teenager. One day, the assistant manager, who illegally brought her teenage daughter to work to help her out, asked me to clean the restrooms. It wasn't my normal job, but I didn't mind. I had a good attitude about it and prepared to go clean the bathrooms. I walked into the men's room and discovered that the reason she asked me to do it was because someone shit all over the bathroom. Smeared fecal matter on the walls, the sink, the floor, the outside of the toilet. The toilet was clogged and hand wet, used toilet paper inside of that and all over the room. It was a complete disaster. I walked out of the bathroom, went back to the kitchen and told the assistant manager, "I'm not cleaning that. You can fire me, but I'm not cleaning it." She sighed heavily and went and got a mop. Worked for a newspaper, editing and actually putting the paper together. Arranging it all, placing stories and pictures where they need to be. Titling, quoting and sourcing everything. I was a one-man team and used an overly complicated system that I figured out how to use really effectively. They treated me like shit, set impossible deadlines and berated me for not meeting them. One day the boss tells me to fully put a paper done by the end of the day. Gave me no warning. I had no articles from the journalists and no photos from photographers. It was my job to collect it all from everyone, and he wants me to do it in a single day. I told him no, if he wants it done, he has to give me more time. He tells me if I don't have it done by the end of the day I'm fired. I tell him that this paper can't function without me. He tells me I need to take the day off and cool my temper, and that he'll do my job for me. Get a call an hour after I get home that he needs me to come in and do it, and I can have as much time as I need. Best one. Only took an hour of having to do your job to make them say, "Fuck this." Working at an important political building. Been there for about a year. Other employees have been there for decades. 99% of the staff is black, including myself. None of us have ever been written up. New manager shows up. A older white lady with a complex, and starts berating people for not doing their jobs, when they are very clearly doing their jobs as the job is defined. She berates people until they backtalk, then fires them for insubordination. She fires 10 out of 13 people, all black, and replaces them with white workers. She approaches me and begins berating me. I am on to what she is doing. I do not react. My lack of reaction leads her to tell me I'm being insubordinate, and I'm fired. That was my "I fucking dare you" moment, although I did not say it. She fired me. 6 months later, she's been fired. Her supervisor is fired, and his supervisor has been demoted to the worst position a supervisor can have. A lawsuit has been filed that resulted in about $100,000 in damages to the victims. Bet she won't do that shit again. Worked for Radio Shack and always butted heads with the district manager. He wanted me to use these ridiculous sales techniques that might work in a big city but were really pushy. The year he became our DM, I won a contest for best salesman in the whole company, out of about 14,000 employees, and I did it without being pushy and forcing stuff on people. He still tried to get me to use these ridiculous techniques each month when he would visit, but after I won the contest I stopped sugarcoating it and would flat out tell him, "That's stupid, I'm not going to do it that way." Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.